Hey Merfolk fans, I'm Joe. Thanks very much for joining me today. If you'd like to support my channel, please take a moment and check the link above to my Patreon page. I'm here with a replay of a modern competitive league. All of you Merfolk pilots have been doing so well lately. We've had 4 consecutive postings of competitive league 5-0s, so I've decided to make the switch from friendlies back to the competitive leagues. Feels like we've got a really strong build going right now. We also probably line up pretty well against a good portion of the metagame. All factors combine to make Merfolk sort of in a better spot than we've been in a long time. So in this league, I want you guys to look particularly at what Benthic Biomancer does for the deck, because there's a lot of confusion among many people about whether Ben is actually substantial upgrade to the deck, or whether, it's just the main deck counter spells that are doing work. They think maybe Ben is just sort of incidentally in the deck, as we do well in a format with a lot of islands or good matchups or whatever. So just pay close attention to how Ben performs in this league, because I thought he did spectacularly. So I'd be very interested to hear if any of you at this point, after watching this, have anything to say sort of in objection to that point. So let's get started. Right, opponent won the die roll here. There's been a lot of burn in the format right now, so I'm kind of feeling this hand. It's got a clear path to Master of Waves while slowing the opponent down. It's not your average Merfolk hand. It's actually kind of a strange hand, but we're on the draw. Maybe we'll just rip an AEther Vial off the top. But it's definitely a keep. It'd be better if one of these lands were another creature or an AEther Vial or something, because we're going to draw into more lands. So having 4 in the opening hand is a little bit much, but I like the quality of the cards that we have besides the lands. Alright, so Scalding Tarn, opponent not revealing too much yet. Now Silvergill is an excellent draw. Depending on what the opponent brings, we may play Silvergill or go with Trickster. Alright, tapped Steam Vent, still not quite sure what's going on yet. Spire Bluff, I guess it could be Storm. Alright, so it's time to go out with Silvergill. Doesn't look like the opponent's going to play a lot of creatures anytime soon, so okay, so alright, now we know what it is. It's blue-red blue-red Living End, cycling a striped Riverwinder. Alright, so, that's going to happen. Not super sure why they're doing it in response to me casting Silvergill. So there's that extra land, that I knew was going to come, mathematically. But we've drawn into another Master of Waves at this point. Opponent plays a tapped Tolaria West. Interesting. Their land situation might be a little bit fishy. If they had another different land to play, they probably would have done that and slammed As Foretold. Well, they might not have As Foretold in hand, but let's see. Also possible that they've got Cryptic Command in hand and they want a turn 4 to have 4 lands online. Harbinger, decent as a flash creature. If the opponent brings back a bunch of big guys from the graveyard, although Striped Riverwinder, not the best example here since it has Hexproof, but Harbinger might be able to bounce some of those big creatures. So let's start chipping in. And it's just turn 3. We can't play Master of Waves yet, so we'll just leave mana up for Merfolk Trickster. So we see a Curator of Mysteries, another cycling creature, and this is one that could get bounced by Harbinger, because it doesn't have Hexproof. Okay, so now they're cycling a Tolaria West, and let's see what they found. All right, so they found a Living End, which, since they didn't play As Foretold, almost certainly means that they are holding Electro Dominance in hand. Let's go ahead and get a Trickster onto the table. We should probably keep their graveyard open. So they currently have 2 fatties in the graveyard. So, there's the obvious line of just jamming Master of Waves, but the read was that they're on Electro Dominance since they specifically sought Living End. If they were short on lands or something and they already had the combo pieces in hand, they could have gone and gotten a land. I don't know what other 0 drops they play. I don't think they run like Engineered Explosives because Living End is a board wipe itself. So anyhow, they got the Living End, so I'm going to go ahead and play Spreading Seas. I could also draw into a counterspell, which is amazing against this deck. And by hitting their red, especially since they did miss their land drop last turn, could potentially keep them off of Electro Dominance. So it seems like a really strong play running out Spreading Seas. Okay, so drew an island. Not super amazing, and it looks like the opponent passed through that turn. So taking them off red, kind of a big deal. We can go ahead and bring in Trickster, since we don't have to be afraid of instant speed Living End now. And the opponent discards a Remand. So we feel like we're in a pretty strong position here. Not quite a 2-turn clock on board, but anything we play is going to make it a 2-turn clock. Ben is pretty sweet. So I'm going to play that now. Get in for 6. Now remember, the opponent can draw red mana at any point, and that turns on Living End immediately. So if we put Ben on the table, we could potentially cycle and throw away one of our creatures. We could pass with instant speed Harbinger up. So the opponent decided to draw 2, discard 2 here with Is It Charm. Definitely trying to look for lands. They discard the Electro Dominance that I've been talking about and a Cryptic Command because they're so short on mana. And then they cycle another Curator. Okay, there's that Steam Vents. So they go for the Electro Dominance, and then there's that Living End that they they got with Teleria West. So I do choose to adapt Ben in response, and I pitch a Master of Waves. Now, it's a bit of a combo with Spreading Seas. When he comes back, he's going to bring a couple of tokens with him. And we've got a bunch of gas in hand. We can, keep developing our board. All right, so the opponent chose to go with that on their turn, presumably because, I could draw into counterspells or more Spreading Seas. So now it's my turn. I drew yet another island, not the best. And I think I'm just going to hardcast a Harbinger here and then hardcast a Master of Waves. Looks like the opponent had a Remand, so they're on 4 cards at this point after drawing from Remand. And no good attacks to be had, so we pass it back to them. And with their flyers, they're in a pretty decent spot right here. They choose to just get in with 1, so not the fastest clock. And at this point, they could, be considered to have turned a bit of corner as kind of a controlling deck. They've got their lands, they've got their board presence, and they've got 4 cards in hand. So for us, something like a counterspell would be amazing. Now, Lord is solid because, Island Walk is a pretty obvious way to win. The opponent is sitting on 5 life. Now, I decided to lead with Harbinger. The opponent left back one of their Curators, which makes me feel like they're not super confident in their hand. For example, if they had like 2 Cryptic Commands, they could just tap my team down twice and swing for 8 twice, and I would just be dead. So I led with Harbinger, since they seem so protective of their board, to see how they would respond. And they went with Cryptic, which was tapping my team and countering a spell. This is a really aggressive line, in my view, because the opponent could have either just untapped and replayed the Curator, or they could have just let it bounce and then just cycle it, drawing another card. This line, to me, just tapping my team, countering the Harbinger, seemed to read like, he had another Cryptic in hand, so I was starting to get a bit worried. With the team tapped, it just seemed correct to run out Master of Waves. Shields down, I don't have a counterspell, but the game's getting really tight, and if I don't establish, a dominant board presence, then I'm definitely just going to lose. So this is a good start. Looks like they're cycling, potentially digging, so they dug a bit with Curator, since whenever you cycle or discard another card, you get to scry, and the opponent put it on the bottom, if I recall correctly. So tapping 3, and then they scooped. It looked like they were starting to tap for Cryptic, but I don't know. I don't know why they would even do that at that point. But I was a bit worried. I thought that they were going to swing for 8, and then I'd untap. They'd tap my team down with another Cryptic, and then swing for another 8. Possible that I could have drawn, like a Trickster or a Harbinger to prevent them from just winning. But I guess that doesn't even work, right? If they get in for 8 this turn, I go down to 8. If they tap my team, even a single Trickster or Harbinger wouldn't do it because they're I could bounce one of the Curators, but I'm still taking 9. So just fortunate that the opponent didn't have, I guess, the third Cryptic. Interesting there that I was able to actually stay in the game because our 1-drop let me put a Master of Waves into the graveyard. If that wasn't the case, then my board presence would have been much less. The opponent would have had a window to be much more aggressive, getting in with his Curators right away rather than just poking with 1. And what else? Spreading Seas, even in a blue-red matchup, did a lot of work keeping Electro Dominance at bay for a turn or two. So decent Merfolk game 1. Let's go ahead and see how game 2 went. Hey guys, back for game 2. Let's take a peek at the sideboard. So my sideboard has been changing a bunch lately. So bear with me as I try to recall what I brought in, what I brought out. Looks like I took out all 4 Spreading Seas. Now, it is poor in the matchup despite having contributed to the win last game. And 2 Harbingers. Costing 4 to get in with Flash is a bit pricey, and we're hoping to keep the opponent off of Living End. If they get to the point where they've got a bunch of big fatties attacking, we've often lost those games. So Harbinger of the Tides just seemed like an easy enough cut. I only have 2 in the deck, so they both came out. Trickster, much easier to get onto the table on the opponent's end step, or to tap down one of their big attackers. So 6 cards out. I would have certainly brought in 2 Wizard's Retorts, and then I guess just the 4 Relic of Progenitus, which is extremely strong in the matchup. So opponent's going to be on the play again, and this is a beautiful hand. We saw how good Ben was in game 1, and Relic is obviously our number 1 card in the matchup, apart from counterspells, I guess. So pretty much a picture-perfect opening hand. AEther Vial would be, welcome, but definitely not complaining about this opener. Opponent had no turn 1 play, follow up with Island, and looks like they're just passing again. So slow stuff from the opponent. The reason you don't run out Relic on turn 1 is you don't have an extra land to crack it. In response, if the opponent, for example, evokes an Ingot Chewer to destroy the artifact, or they could have any other artifact removal like a Braid. We really, really want to get some value out of Relic, and you can see that their graveyard is still empty. They didn't take the opportunity on turn 1 even to cycle anything, so it looks like they're low on cyclers right now. Makes me wonder what kind of hand they kept. But first things first, we can go ahead and get in with Ben. Now, it probably would have been correct for me to play my land before going to attacks. If the opponent did decide, after seeing Ben perform well last game, that they wanted to bolt him or something right now, I may have wanted to go ahead and use his adapt ability. But we're still learning how to use adapt in various circumstances. It's not always going to be correct to loot. For example, in this hand here, sure, I could draw a card and potentially draw something better than what I have, like maybe a counter spell, in which case I'd probably pitch a Master of Waves, which is good in this matchup, so I probably would want to do it. But in another matchup, we may just want to hold our mana up to do better things, like if we have a Spreading Seas to play or another 2-drop. But probably correct with Adapt on the table to play your land before combat. So I'll follow up with an island, and I'm going to go for Relic here, since I now have another land up. All right, so they're remanding it. They're going to get to draw a card, temporarily counter the Relic, but you should not play Relic back out in this situation because they could just, again, destroy it without any mana up for us to activate it. So let's go ahead and play our second Benthic Biomancer. Okay, they're going to cycle on their main phase. And now they pass with 6 cards in hand. Pretty sure I'm going to be able to get a Relic down this turn. And drawing another is really strong, actually. So let's play our Mutavault. Go ahead and attack. And it's not quite time to adapt yet, because we do want to have mana open here. So I can actually play out both relics, and I'm already eating into the opponent's cycled creatures. All right, so a fourth blue source. They're going to have Cryptic online if they want it. Let's get rid of that that Serpent. And having drawn Deprive, we're still probably not going to adapt. Just keep chipping in with the 1-drops. And just pass. So this is a pretty dominant position here. Opponent goes to hardcast a Curator of Mysteries, and that's an easy target for Deprive. Go ahead and get that guy out of the graveyard. Opponent plays their 5th land on turn 5. Okay, we continue drawing gas. Now this is a spot where we can adapt one of the bends because we're not... There's no real reason to play a Lord here. And we can start getting creatures in the graveyard to completely take the opponent off of the living end plan. So we pitch a Master of Waves after drawing another Master of Waves. And now you can see that our 1-drops are starting to present more of a clock. If I do the same play next turn, then I'm suddenly swinging for 4 with my 1-drops. And no other creatures on the table. Okay, opponent plays their 6th land and cycles Talaria West. Now, I was a little bit afraid of, for example, Engineered Explosives on 1. But again, I don't think this deck is ever going to play Engineered Explosives because they have access to Living End. So I think that what they did was they got an Ancestral Vision, which, without As Foretold on the table, they just have to suspend this. Which is pretty poor since I have a 4-turn clock on table as things stand. Keep their graveyard trim. They pass the turn. Draw an AEther Vial. I feel like that's a little bit late. We could potentially cycle that away with Ben, though in this particular matchup we're going to want to put more creatures in the graveyard. All right, so the opponent takes 3. I opted not to adapt there. There's no rush. But I'll play the AEther Vial and leave up 2 mana. Get rid of that Scalding Tarn and just pass the turn. We've got 2 mana up to crack 2 relics, including the Mutavault. You know, we've got 5 power on board as things stand. And if the opponent decides to go for Living End for whatever reason, like if they cycle 3 creatures and then Electro Dominance, I can of course get another Master of Waves into the graveyard, at which point, you know, when they come back, my elementals are going to be 3/2s. Alright, so they're just passing with 5 cards in hand. Definitely not going to cycle any of my relics. You keep them on board as long as you can. Take the AEther Vial up. Okay, so the 4th Master of Waves has shown up. And yeah, let's go to combat. Now, after this attack step, the opponent would presumably be at 5. And as I mentioned, with Mutavault, we could have a 2-turn clock here. All right. Looks like we're going to see... Well, what is this? So it's Electro Dominance for 2. The opponent can cast like a Living End, but it seems really poor for them here. I'm going to take this opportunity to adapt the other Ben. The Deprive is pretty good. We can toss another Master of Waves, and I think that when the opponent saw that, it kind of broke their spirit. I'm going to get rid of the Electro Dominance. The opponent's going to take 2. And at that point, they just scooped. I mean, I can't really envision a more controlling situation on our side. They absolutely can't do anything with the graveyard. That's their plan A. And as for any plan Bs, we counterspelled the first creature they tried to cast. We've got an AEther Vial ticking up. We've got we're representing some kind of card draw with Relic. We've got a man land on the table, and you know they're going to be at 6 life. So they decided to give up at that point. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, Ben has been a big contributor to all my matches, but he's exceptionally strong in any Living End matchup where you can use him to draw more interaction and stock your own graveyard with creatures, making Living End less of a viable strategy for the opponent. So let me know your thoughts on this match. Let me know your thoughts on the matchup in general. Have you been seeing it a lot? How do you feel that we line up against them? I personally think that we're pretty solid against them. You know, but so we all have somewhere between like 4 and 8 counterspells between our main deck and sideboard, and then of course most of us have 4 Relic of Progenitus, so it's a pretty decent matchup. Leave your thoughts down below. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and tune in for the next video where I'll be back with round 2 of this Modern Competitive League. Thanks guys, I'll see you there.